our next paper will be presented in English because although Dr. Alula speaks fluently Amharic, his co-author speaks only in Italian and English, and she doesn't speak Amharic. So we'll be proceeding this paper in English. The title of the paper that's going to be presented by Dr. Alula Pankhurst and Silvia Iannelli is entitled Where are the looted Ethiopian crowns? Reconstructing restitution histories. Dr. Alula will be the first speaker, and to be followed by Silvia. And I would like to introduce both presenters before we proceed into the paper presentation. Dr. Alula is a social anthropologist and joined Young Lives as Ethiopia Country Director in 2009. His role involves coordinating Young Lives research work in Ethiopia and leading on topics including urban relocation, child work, early marriage, and violence against children. Alula is a graduate of Oxford University and has an MA and PhD in social anthropology from Manchester University and has taught at Addis Ababa University. He worked in the Well-being in Developing Countries project at the University of Bath and is also a lead researcher for WIDE, a longitudinal study of community change in rural Ethiopia. His research interests include migration and displacement, poverty and well-being, community change, food security and social protection, and child and youth developments. He has been involved in policy dialogue on child marriage and FGM, female genital mutilation, early childhood and youth development. Alula is founding member of the Child Research and Practice Forum, board member of the Ethiopian Society of Sociologists, Social Workers, and Anthropologists, and board chair of the Forum for Social Studies. I'm sure all of you know who Dr. Alula is. I will proceed to present our second presenter, the co-author, so that I don't interrupt in the middle in their presentation. Silvia Iannelli has MA, Masters of Arts in Cultural Anthropology, specialized in anthropological cultural heritage, and she is currently heading for her PhD. Here, Silvia Iannelli teaches cultural anthropology at NABA, New Academy of Arts, in Milan, Italy. She is currently candidate as the PhD program in Historical, Geographical, and Anthropological Studies of the University of Padua and Ca' Foscari University of Venice. She has been visiting researcher at the Institute of Ethiopian Studies, Addis Ababa University, in 2024 and 25. Without much ado, these are great specialists, and I wish Dr. Alula Pankhurst good presentation.
ዶክተር ዮናስን በጣም አመሰግናለሁኝ። ይህንን ስለ ዘውዶች የማቀርበውን ጽሁፍ ከሲልቪያ ጋራ ስጀምር በቅድሚያ የኢትዮጵያ ቅርስ ባለስልጣን ሰራተኞች ብዙ ነው የረዱኝ፣ ብዙ ነገር አብረን የሰራን ነው እና የጋራ ስራ እንደሆነ እንድትቆጥሩልኝ እፈልጋለሁኝ። I'm going to do the presentation in English, but questions can be asked በአማርኛ. So I'm talking about 10 different crowns which were looted from Ethiopia, 4 by the British and 6 by the Italians, and Silvia will join me on that. So the historical context of looting between the British expedition in 1868 and the Italian occupation of 35-41 symbolizes the removal and loss of sovereignty, and crowns were used to represent ordained kingship, political legitimacy, and sovereignty. And their loss, the loot, means that there was a loss of cultural heritage, and this raises a lot of restitution debates. We've tried to look at this from a point of view of history, art history, archival investigation, museum studies, also looking at internet images searches. This is an age of digitization, and we had a lot on AI this morning to try and understand these provenances. So first, starting with the 4 crowns which were looted during the 1868 Magdala expedition. So I don't need in this audience to say much about the looting in 1868. And there was, the American journalist talked about these 4 royal crowns which were taken, 2 very fine specimens, worth a lot of money, thinking they should be in the British Museum. So there were cases of 2 restitutions of the 4 crowns to Ethiopia. The first one was in 1965, the crown returned by Queen Elizabeth. Actually, it's not the first one, it's the second one. It should have come afterwards. And this one was kept in the Victoria and Albert Museum for over a century. And then when the Queen visited in 1965 at a farewell dinner in Asmara, you can see that she handed over the crown that you can see here in the picture at the dinner. And this crown then is currently in the Palace Museum. There was also a silver gilded crown which was seen by Emperor Haile Selassie when he visited the UK, and this crown has disappeared. It was taken by a German traveler at the time of Magdala. He took it to Berlin, and then the British complained. They said this was our war, so we took the crown, so return the crown to us. So the crown was sent to Queen Victoria, and then they decided to send it back to Empress Zewditu. Possibly it was looted during the Italian period, and it's been called the phantom crown because we have no evidence. So in 1924, when Rastafari went to visit Britain and he met King George, he was shown the crown and told it would be returned. And he said, although the capture of Emperor Theodore's crown and its removal to England in no way affected Ethiopian independence, yet to have it said this crown was the crown of an Ethiopian emperor and to have it appear in a foreign country did not please me. Hence, H.M. King George's gracious permission that this crown now be returned to Ethiopia was, I was convinced, a great mark of friendship, and since I felt very pleased, I expressed to the king my profound, sincere gratitude. So the British wanted to give a decoration to Empress Zewditu, but because of the sexist norms at the time, they couldn't give a woman a decoration, so instead they decided to give the crown, and there were 2, one very beautiful, one in gold in the Victoria and Albert, and one that was less beautiful in silver, and guess which one they returned. So this is a picture of the gold crown that is currently in the Victoria and Albert Museum. And actually there is an inscription proving that it was a sacerdotal crown, a church crown, that was given to the church of Kuskwam in Gondar by Emperor Yasu II and his mother, Empress Mentawab, probably around 1740. There's also another crown, so-called crown, which is more like a cap that is gold and silver. Unfortunately, it's in the British collection, and there is no picture of it, only this from an early magazine. I've sent a request that the Royal Collection should give us a picture, because it's actually, from the description, you can see a very beautiful crown. Now, we're moving on to the crowns looted on during the Italian occupation, and I will hand over to Silvia to talk about this, and then I will come back to the question of the attributions. Silvia, puoi parlare?
Sì.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So I've got the first slide. You won't be able to see the slide, so I will move on. If you say next slide, I will move on.
Yeah, okay. We can go to the slide talking about the Italian looted crowns. Okay, great. I can see you behind the slide behind you. Okay, so thank you, Alula, and thank you to all of you. So what I will describe now is this fact occurred during the Italian occupation, so during the Italo-Ethiopian War in 1936-1941. So during the Italian occupation, as we all know, the most part of the buildings, of the royal palaces, of the churches in Addis Ababa and in other parts of Ethiopia have been attacked and looted by the fascist black skirts and by the militaries, and a lot of heritage has been taken and brought to Italy. In Italy, at that time, there were different cultural institutions that used the war booty to use it as a propaganda device. And the most important propaganda institution was, of course, the Colonial Museum of Rome, where 6 of the crowns taken in Addis Ababa have been taken in 1938. As you can see from this piece of journal, Il Giornale d'Italia of 8th of March 1938, 6 imperial crowns and a scepter of the Negus has been donated to the Colonial Museum directly by Mussolini, by the Duce, who had received it by Graziani, the Viceroy of Ethiopia, until 1937. So this consisted in 4 very important crowns that were alleged to have belonged to emperors of Ethiopia, specifically Theodorus, Johannes, Menelik, and Haile Selassie. So 4 crowns of the Neguses and 2 crowns, one attributed to Ras Kassa and another one attributed to Rastafari. And as it has been specified in the article of the newspaper, Mussolini had received it as a donation from Marshal Graziani and in the Colonial Museum as a gift. Okay, next slide. So, one of the most important events that has occurred in the last 6 months, it has been the release of the archive of the former Colonial Museum. So until 6 months ago, it was possible to study the collection of the former Colonial Museum of Rome, but not to analyze the documents that were still closed to the scholars. This archive has been released 6 months ago, and a lot of very important discoveries have been done thanks to the documents that we can find in the archives. So the image that you can watch on the slide is exactly 1 page of the inventory of 1938 that has been found in the archive, where it is now possible to find a lot of information, new information about those crowns. Particularly, we can find the inventory numbers of those crowns, and thanks to this, it has been possible to make a confrontation of the documents related to the general heritage of the museum and locate exactly the history of the crowns. So, for the coronation, Emperor Haile Selassie decided to have an exhibition that was organized by Queen Zewditu, which is said to have included several crowns of rulers. The British writer Evelyn Waugh claims also to have seen the crown restituted in this museum by the British at the exhibition. And Richard Pankhurst and Ian Campbell have suggested that, on the other side, the crowns could have been taken from the monastery of the Reganos during the famous massacre of 1937, from which several crowns were said to have been plundered. So we still have a doubt, of course, related to which could be the exact location where these 6 crowns have been looted by the Italians. It can be this museum made by Queen Zewditu or the Reganos monastery. Next slide, thank you. So, after the exhibition in the Colonial Museum, where the crowns remained until 1943, the crowns have been taken again by the fascists and brought to the north of Italy after the break of Italy into the liberation of the south after September 8, 1943. And the crowns have disappeared. Inside the archive that we are able to consult right now, we have found the results of this very intricate and mysterious history. So the picture that you can see on the slide is a very important image that has been published in a magazine in 1968, which depicts 2 of the partisans that have liberated Italy in 1945. They are General Cadorna and Walter Audisio. General Cadorna on the left and Walter Audisio on the right. Walter Audisio, who is also named Colonnello Valerio, is the person who shot Mussolini in 1945 in Dongo. And this picture that depicts them with 3 of the needles crown has for a long time been interpreted as the fact that the crowns could have been taken directly by Mussolini during his attempt to escape in Switzerland, and that those crowns would have been taken by the partisans and then disappeared again. But the real history that we have found on the document of the archive reveals a different story. So it is true that the partisans, namely Colonnello Valerio, took the crowns, but not in the Mussolini baggage when he was trying to escape. But on the contrary, they have been brought inside the palace of the Ministry of Culture in the north of Italy, where, when the north has been liberated by the partisans, those crowns have been found. And after this, the crowns have been sent again to the museum in Rome, and from this moment we thought they had been disappeared. Next slide. But having found a lot of descriptions in the archive, it is now possible to make some hypotheses about their current location. And actually, the hypothesis that Alula, Pankhurst, and me would like to propose is that those 6 crowns have been actually restituted to Ethiopia in 1962 with restitution laws that have been done after the end of the war and in accordance with the Peace Treaty of 1947. Actually, with the Peace Treaty, Italy was committed to restitute all the belongings of Ethiopia that had been taken in the country after during the occupation, and some of the material that have not disappeared and have actually been found in the country have been actually restituted. And those 6 crowns, matching the historical pictures and the description that we have found in the archive, are possibly here now in Addis Ababa, and we can show you some of the pictures. So this first one that we are showing right now is the crown attributed to King Theodore that you can see on the black and white picture on the left, taken into the Colonial Museum in a paper of 1941, and on the right, these are pictures that we took inside the storage of the National Museum of Addis Ababa some weeks ago. So the descriptions perfectly match, and also the visual match is very interesting and can make us think that this is the found. The description that the fascists made in 1944 actually lists a series of distinct elements that have been lost during the different trips that they did. And as you can remark, those missing stones and missing small pieces, exactly we can find it on the crowns nowadays. Okay, next slide. So this crown is one attributed to Emperor Johannes. As before, you can see it as it was in the Colonial Museum on the black and white picture, and as it is exposed right now on the throne hall at the National Museum on the first floor. The decoration, the cross decoration on the top, it was actually missing, so it's possible that it has been replaced after the restitution. And also in this case, the missing big stones corresponds to the description that we have found into the archives. Next slide. This is the first crown that you have been able to locate. It is actually exposed inside the throne hall in Unity Park. So it has been recently exposed in the new exhibition. It is attributed to Haile Selassie inside the exhibition in Unity Park, while in Italy it was considered to be owned by Menelik. And also in this case, the pictures are very important to locate those small white background images that correspond in the two crowns. Next slide. Okay, this is one of the most rich crowns. It was a coronet attributed to Rastafari, whose picture has been taken in different positions also into the Colonial Museum in 1943. And we have located it inside the storage of the National Museum. The description in the Taxis report of 1945 mentioned exactly a row of butterflies made of white stones that you can remark both in the picture of the Colonial Museum on the left and in the picture of the actual crown on the right. And one of the butterflies is missing in both of the items. Next slide. So this crown is the one which was attributed for the Italians to the Emperor Haile Selassie. In the histories, the cross decoration on the top is missing, while it was still present when the crown was in Italy. But judging from the description of the fascist of March 1944, the items seems to correspond. Next slide. This is a crown that has been attributed for sure wrongly to Ras Kafka, as Alula will explain in a moment. It is a mistake to attribute such a crown to Ras, because the Greek crown was probably attributed to the Negus and not to the Rases. But the description, anyway, make us able to identify the two crowns, so the crowns that we can remark into the picture with the two partisans that is on the left, and one of the crowns that is now exposed inside the throne hall in the National Museum of Addis Ababa, together with the Negus Johannes previous crown. Okay, next slide. And I leave the floor with the attribute to Alula.
Thank you, Silvia. I'll go quick from now on and talk about the attributions and bequests. Just a few slides left. So the crowns attributed to Emperor Theodorus that you see here. So this is the one that is in the National Museum storage that corresponds to the Italian one. This one was in the Victorian Albert and is now in the Palace Museum. This one is still in the Victorian Albert. This one is in the Royal Collection. This one was returned from UK and has disappeared. But there are also other crowns that Emperor Theodorus gave to churches, to Urakidane, to Abu Nahara, to Uganda Taklahaimanu. So you see many of these are the square type ones, but there are also some round type ones which correspond to that. But we have no evidence that this is definitely can be attributed to, I'd say, Theodorus. I'll come back to that. Then there is the one attributed to Emperor Johannes that was in the Colonial Museum, that's now on view in the National Museum. And you can't see it very well here, but it says as Johannes Ethiopia on this part here. And you can see the only picture we have of Johannes has a crown that has a top a bit similar. But there are other ones in Asuncion, his coronation crown, and a picture of some priests carrying it here. And you see also that he donated to Dima Georgis, to the Lord Mariam, to Abu Nahara, to Urakidane, and to Uganda Taklahaimanu. So again, the kind of square types here, but also the round three-tiered ones over here. And then when we come to the crowns attributed to Azemindik, here this is the one in the Colonial Museum, and we've been able to prove it corresponds to this one because of the missing pieces we were able to identify. And it is in the Unity Park, attributed to Menelik here. And here you see one of the very few pictures we have of Menelik. There are other ones of him wearing different types of crowns here. And it's actually quite interesting to see how the Zewditu crown is very, very similar to this one. Perhaps not identical, but even the decorations on it are quite similar. And then you have other images of Emperor Menelik here, and crowns he donated to Asuncion, to Manadesha, that are in the catalogue of the ARCCH. And then when we come to the crowns attributed to Ras Teferi, so this one was in the Colonial Museum, it's now in the National Museum in here in the storage, and we've been able to prove, because of the missing parts that we saw earlier about the butterflies also here that correspond, and one missing butterfly, but also the missing stone here that corresponds, that this is, with this representation of Emperor Menelik, that is clearly the same crown. And here you see a picture, but we haven't found a picture of Rastafari with exactly the same crown. This is a similar one with his coronets. Of course, we need to distinguish between the crowns and these coronets. And here is the different types of coronets that were provided to the different nobility. And finally, for almost the last one, the one attributed to Emperor Haile Selassie, which is we believe is exactly the same one in the National Museum, although it's missing its top, but the similarities in the decorations are quite clear. So this is in the Colonial Museum, this is in the storage here, and you can see that it's actually quite different from his coronation crown, that is much more, has a slant there where this is straight. These are all three the coronation crown. He also donated crowns to the churches, particularly the Emperor Haile Selassie, and this is a picture of his coronation. Now, finally, the one that's wrongly attributed to Ras Kasa. So this is clearly the same crown. We're looking at the descriptions, but it is in some senses similar to Emperor Haile Selassie's coronation crown with the St. George picture. But Ras Kasa, and this is his grandson Asawasan, who sent me these pictures, he had two coronets, and both of them are different, are clearly not this kind of three-tiered Nubus crowns. One which was given to Galatea Church in Ntoto, and another one given to St. Mary's Church in Asmara. Here you have the St. George replaced by the figure of Haile Selassie there. And here some pictures of Ras Kasa wearing coronets. So to conclude, our presentation has confirmed that 10 Ethiopian crowns were looted and 8 have been repatriated to Ethiopia. Of the 4 looted by the British Magdala expedition, 2 are still in UK museums, one in the Victoria and Albert and the other in the Royal Collection. Of the 2 that were returned by the British, one is in the Palace Museum and the other is missing. If it was relooted by the Italians, as some people have claimed, it certainly was not in the Colonial Museum. Silvia has gone through and it definitely wasn't there. It may be in another museum. So our presentation suggests that all 6 crowns repatriated by the Italian fascist leaders, and we've been able to establish this was in 1952. There are the lists. Silvia has found the documentation of them being sent away. Sorry, we didn't present that. So these are in Ethiopian Museum collections, but we think this has been forgotten. It was almost 75 years ago through institutional amnesia. So we have argued that 5 of these are in the National Museum, 2 on display and 3 in storage, and 1 is in the Unity Park Museum. But these are still hypotheses. We are presenting it in part to get to chit and comments and more information, because we need to do a much more careful comparison of the descriptions of the crowns in Italy with the current conditions, especially regarding the missing decorations. And actually, we have found out that there are some more missing decorations than the Italians registered. So in the transport, some of the pendants, some of the stones have disappeared. So a careful study of the images and decorations and historical research about provinces is needed, and further research on the production and use of crowns for coronations, but also as gifts to churches. Because one of the very interesting things is none of the 6 crowns, we have not found a single Ethiopian ruler wearing any of the 6 crowns that the Italians took. So where were they? Were they in Debre Libanos, gifted to Debre Libanos? Were they in the Palace Museum? There is still a lot of mystery, and we need to find out more about the 1930 Coronation Museum, which can be much donated, and we need to have, more generally, a better understanding of what the Italians looted, what has been returned. We have the lists, 1951, 52, 56, we have the lists, but it's very difficult from the lists to check against what is there, because the descriptions are not very good, and most importantly, what remains in Italy. Every little museum in Italy, every little town in Italy has a war museum. There are thousands of museums in Italy with Ethiopian objects, so we need a database. This morning we were talking about the digital age and AI. there is good work being done on the manuscripts which were looted, but the artifacts, we're still a long way from understanding who has what. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Alula. Thank you, Silvia, for giving us the result of your groundbreaking research. I find this as an eye-opener for research on our heritage, which we think we have in hand, and what we don't know, and the histories associated with our heritage. Z and Zarai, Zaga, Sost, Eda and Arat. Okay. Z. ራሳችሁን ያስተዋወቃችሁ።
እሺ አው ቅድምም እንትን የጸደቀ አባተ ነው የሚባል it's always educational, to listen to Dr. Alula in this so heartwarming that so heartwarming that we are treated to this kind of presentation. I have just two simple, call it questions, reflections. Number one, Alula, it may be appropriate for the British to call it the Magdala expedition, but to me that is a euphemism. It's invasion. Why do we call it expedition? And more important is I just want to be educated to keep the returned crowns and other artifacts. What insurance do we have that they will not be, God forbid, looted again, destroyed again? So just two simple things.
Just one quick question. When you try to repatriate these objects from Italy versus Great Britain, can you just give me a comparative sense of what the attitude is? Which one is harder, which one is easier, and why? When you try to repatriate objects from Italy versus the UK, what is the attitude like? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Addis. I am the World Heritage Nomination Research Team here in the Ethiopian Authority. For the sake of general audience, I want to give some comments, and I have one question. But for the sake of general audience, I am interested to explain in Amharic. አመሰግናለሁ። ስሜ ኃይሌ ደስታ ነው የሚባለው። እዚሁ በኢትዮጵያ ቅርስ ባለስልጣን የዓለም አቀፍ ቅርስ ኖሚኔሽን ባለሙያ ነኝ። አንድ መጀመሪያ ወደ አስተያየት ነው ለጥያቄ ከመምራት በፊት ለዶክተር አሉላ እና ለባልደረባው እጅግ ከመቀመጫ ብድግ ብዬ ምስጋና ማቅረብ እፈልጋለሁ። ምክንያቱም ለእነዚህ የኢትዮጵያ ቅርሶች የሰጡትን አቴንሽን ኮንሰርን እኔ እንዳንድ ኢትዮጵያዊ አገር ወዳድ ኢትዮጵያዊ ማድነቅ እፈልጋለሁ፣ ማመስገን እፈልጋለሁ። ከዚህ በመቀጠል አንደኛው ተርሚኖሎጂ ላይ መስጠት እፈልጋለሁ አስተያየት when we say Italian occupation, Italian looting, Italian ስንል is a very, very sensitive issue. We must be careful about this because we are not fighting with Italians, we are fighting with fascist Italians. Both are very, very different. And nowadays, Italians are good friends with Ethiopians. የሚለውን ነገር ለማለት ነው። ሁለተኛው ግን ሪፓትሪዬሽን በተመለከተ አንድ የዩኔስኮ አሁን አብዛኛው ገንዘብ ያላቸው ስልጣን ያላቸው ምዕራባውያን ቅርሶቹ ባሉበት ይጠበቁ። ምክንያቱም ወደ አፍሪካ ቢሄዱ ይጎዳሉ፣ ይበላሻሉ፣ ይሰረቃሉ የሚል አርጊውመንት እየሰጡ ቅርሶቹን እዛ የማስቀረት ባህሪ አዝማሚያ ይቻላል። አንድ ዓለም አቀፍ ስብሰባ ላይ ተገኝቼ የታደሙትና የሰማሁት ነገር ነው። በጆሮዬ የሰማሁት ነገር ነው። ዩኔስኮ ላይ ህጎቹ አይኮም ሲያወጣ ማንኛውም የዩኔስኮ ህግ ነው የሚገዛው አይደል? እነዚህ ህጎች ለባለቤቶቹ ሄሪቴጅ ዊዛውት ኦሪጂናል ኮንቴክስት ኢዝ ናቲንግ አት ኦል። ስለዚህ ለባለቤቶቹ እንዲመለስ ዩኔስኮ ላይ ህግ ላይ ኢንፍሉዌንስ በማድረግ የኢትዮጵያ የቅርስ ባለሙያዎች የኢትዮጵያ ቅርስ ባለስልጣን ምን ላይ ነው ስታንድ ያለው? አይ ዋንት ቱ ኖ ዚስ። ሁለተኛው ማወቅ የምፈልገው ነገር እና ዶክተር አሉላ ቢመልሱልኝ የምፈልገው ነገር ይሄንን ጥረት ስታደርጉ የባለስልጣን መስሪያ ቤቱ፣ የቱሪዝም ሚኒስቴር፣ የመንግስት ድጋፍ፣ ምክንያቱም የትኛው ላይ ጥሩ ጎን ነበር፣ የትኛው ላይ ክፍተት ነበር፣ ሪፓትሪዬሽን ሪስቲቱሽን ላይ ወደ ባለቤቱ እንዲመለስ በምታደርጉት ዲፕሎማሲያዊ የገንዘብ የተለያዩ ድጋፍ ላይ ምን ገጠማችሁ? አይ ዋንት ቱ ኖ። ታንክ ዩ።
ኦኬ ታንክ ዩ አሉላ። ታንክ ዩ ቬሪ ማች ዊሊያም። ታንክ ዩ ሶ ማች። ሶ ዩ ዲድ by your profession, you did what you should do, and we appreciate that. Regarding Alula, I don't have any question regarding this. I don't have any clue, any idea. It's in my profession, so I don't have the intention. I don't have the intuition. I don't have only the reflection, and that is, you see, I think Alula has got this feeling, what he's doing now, having it from his family. It is intergenerational transmission. Okay? You know, Professor Pankhurst did in the whole his life. So now, I am asking this house to join me to call Dr. Alula Professor Pankhurst II. Thank you very much.
አመሰግናለሁ።
ስማችሁን የተነገር።
እሺ፣ ስሜ ተወልደ አብዶሽ ይባላለሁ። ከሐረሪ ባህል ቅርስ ቱሪዝም ቢሮ ነው የመጣሁት። ለፕሬዘንቴሽኑና የኢትዮጵያ ሀብቶችን ቅርሶችን እንዴት ማስመለስና ማየት ባለብን ደረጃ እውቀቱ ላይ በመሳተፌ ደስታ ይሰማኛል። ግን ይሄንን ማስፋት አንችልም ወይ? የኢትዮጵያ ሀብቶች እነኚህ ብቻ ናቸው ወይ? ውጪ ያሉን ሀብቶች በኦርቶዶክስ ቤተክርስቲያን የተወሰዱ፣ ከሐረር ላይ ደግሞ ስፔሲፊካሊ ማኑስክሪፕቶች በተለያዩ ሙዚየሞችና በግለሰብ እጅ ላይ ያሉ፣ በተለያዩ የጨረታዎች ላይ በውጪ በሚገኙ ኦክሽኖች ላይ እየቀረቡ የምናያቸው ኦንላይን ላይ የምናያቸው ቅርሶቻችን፣ ሀብቶቻችን፣ የሀገር ሀብቶች አሉ። እነኛን ምን ያህል እናውቃቸዋለን? እንዴት ነው ማወቅስ የምንችለው? ካወቅም በኋላስ ለማስመለሱ ምን አይነት ስትራቴጂ መከተል መቻል አለብን የሚለው ላይ ትንሽ ከቀረቡት ሊስቶች በተጨማሪ ሰፋ አድርገን ብናየው ጥሩ አይሆንም ወይ የሚለውን ለማቅረብ ነው። አመሰግናለሁ።
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Dr. Alula. I'm always, actually, it warms my heart always when I listen to you fighting for the repatriation, restitution of Ethiopian heritages abroad. My question is actually related to the ideas raised by someone from the backside. Oftentimes, those who have taken heritages out of their context and are holding abroad say, as he said, if they return back to their original countries, they will be in a bad position. But is there any research done on this to the contrary? to show that they are in good hands. They are properly preserved and properly, displayed and promoted. This is one. The second one is actually about the restitution law itself. We know that objects looted properly may fall within the restitution law. But objects which are not looted, which were acquired in other forms, both or through donation, which were given, where do we actually locate the restitution law that actually governs that? Would you reflect on that?
Thank you. I stand corrected, Dr. Tzadeka, about Magdala, and also about adding fascist whenever we talk about Italy. This is totally correct. It was shorthand that I used these, but indeed, there was a very violent incidents, and the fascist rule was very horrendous. In terms of what insurance do we have about items which were returned, and several people also asked the question, well, what guarantee do we have that items are not going to be stolen again? So it looks like one of the crowns that the Italians returned was then that the British returned was then possibly taken by the Italians, though we haven't been able to find it. But the thing is that we have some very good counter-examples. The best example is the request 4 years after the Magdala campaign or invasion or whatever we call it. Johannes asked for the return of the Kubranagast. Queen Victoria asked the British Museum, and the trustees agreed to send it back. It was sent back, and despite changes in regime, moving of the capital, Italian occupation, the Derg period, in Raguel Church, over 150 years, that manuscript has been preserved through the Ethiopian Orthodox Church until today. It's the best example of the earliest restitution on the continent, maybe even worldwide, and it has been kept. And even though we have the amnesia of what happened 70-something years ago about these crowns are here, in this institution. They are being preserved. So I think the argument that items cannot be kept is not valid, but what's important is that restitution initiatives go hand in hand with museum-to-museum cooperations. It's not a question of simply dumping. You need cooperative agreements where the institutions which are donating items which were taken by their ancestors help in the display, in the preservation, in the transfer of knowledge, in the training. Restitution is a way of bringing history alive and creating bridges, not something that should divide and separate. So, very interesting question, about the difference between Britain and Italy. And so, there are basically three types of restitution, very rapidly. From museums, from personal collections, and from auctions. Now, museums is the most difficult. In Britain, there is even a law which prevents items from going out without an act of parliament. So the only means without an act of parliament is through long-term loans. Tanzania asked for objects back in 1972 at independence. Those objects are still in Tanzania. The long-term loan became a permanent loan. So I am an advocate of asking back. Victor and Albert, for instance, has a very big collection of Ethiopian artifacts, crowns, the empress's dresses, slippers, beautiful objects, shields, and so forth. They would be, I think, willing to do a long-term loan. The second type is from descendants of soldiers or people who bought it and so forth. And there, the moral argument has worked very well. There was the AFROMET, the Association for the Return of Magdala Ethiopian Treasures, that was very successful for some years in persuading the descendants of soldiers that they shouldn't be keeping these objects that don't mean anything for them. And many did return, and there isn't that legal problem with the museum. The third is the auctions. things come up in auctions, and here, the Ethiopian Heritage Authority, and thanks to Professor Ababa, several cases in the last few years, auctions have been cancelled through saying these items have been looted. And that has been very successful. The problem is sometimes the auction gets cancelled and the item disappears and is sold through other means. And so then the negotiation process is really important. So I think between Italy and in UK, the problem in UK is that those that are in museums, it's very difficult to get out except through long-term loan. In Italy, we don't know what is where. So there are these crowns, there are also the thrones, there are some items returned, there's the Parliament paintings, but there's a vast amount of items still in many, many of the regional museums. ኃይለ ኢየሱስ ጥያቄ ዋናው ጉዳዩ ምንድን ነው? የዩኔስኮ የ1970 እንደ አውሮፓ አቆጣጠር ህግ ወደ ኋላ ምንም አይጠቅምም። ከዛ በኋላ የተዘረፉ ቅርሶች ወይ የጠፉ ቅርሶች ወይ በህገወጥ መንገድ የወጡ ቅርሶች ላይ ኢትዮጵያ በኢንተርፖል ካስመዘገበቻቸው ለማስመለስ በጣም ይቀላል። ግን ከዛ በፊት ላሉት ያ ህግ ስለማይሰራ ነው በድርድር በዲፕሎማሲ በተለያየ መንገድ በውሰት በማሳመን በሚዲያ በጋራ ስራ የኢትዮጵያ ቅርስ ባለስልጣን እንደዚሁም የውጭ ጉዳይ ሚኒስቴር የኤምባሲዎቹ በየሀገሮቹ ትልቅ ሚና ሊጫወቱ የሚችሉትና ከዛ አንጻር ነው መታየት ያለበት። ሌላው የአባቴ ብርታት የለኝም እውነት ለመናገር ትንሽ የእሱን ፈለግ መከተል መሞክር እንኳን። ስለዚህ በጣም ነው የማመሰግነው። እንግዲህ የቀረው የጨረታን በሚመለከት ችግሩ ምንድነው? ጨረታ ይቀርብና ከሁለት ሳምንት በኋላ ያ ቅርስ ይወጣል። እንደ አጋጣሚ ውጭ ሀገር የሚረዱን ሰዎች አሉ። ኧረ ጨረታ በህግ አምላክ እናስቁመው የሚረዱን ሰዎች አሉ። ግን ቶሎ ካልተረባረብን ያ ነገር ጨረታ ላይ ሊወጣ ይችላል፣ ግለሰብ ብቻ ሊገባ ይችላል። ስለዚህ ጥንቃቄ የጨረታን እንደውም አንድ ቡድን ጨረታ የሚከታተል ያስፈልጋል። ደግሞም የዳያስፖራ ድርጅቶች በጣም እየረዱን ነው። የንጉሳውያን የድርጅት የልዑል ኤርምያስ ሁለት ጊዜ እንደዚህ ጋሻም አሁን የእቴጌ ጥሩ ወርቅንም የፀጉር ጌጥ አስመልሰውልናል። ስለዚህ ዳያስፖራውን ሊረዳን ይችላል። የውጭ የቅርስ ባለስልጣን ትልቅ ሚና አለው። የውጭ ጉዳይ ሚኒስቴር እና ኤምባሲዎቹም ትልቅ ሚና አላቸው እና ይሄ ነገር ሊሳካ የሚችለው በጋራ ስንረባረብ ነው እንጂ የአንድ ሰው ወይ የአንድ ግለሰብ ወይ የአንድ ተቋም ጥረት አይደለም። የጋራ ስራ ነው መሆን ያለበት። የተረሳ ነገር ካለ እንግዲህ በዚህ ላቁም። Silvia, I think most of the questions were basically about restitution and what can happen in terms of what ways restitution can work and what kind of legal framework there is and what kind of means can one promote restitution. So there wasn't specific questions on the detail of your presentation.
Thank you for providing me this chance. I wanted to speak because there are a couple of questions that concept EHA as an institution. And then also personally my reflection. Dr. Zetek, the Magdala, we cannot call it the Magdala invasion because it's an expedition. The principal purpose of the British coming to Ethiopia is not to occupy the country, rather to get European prisoners, particularly Duncan Cameron, and Rasa. Rasa actually was a very prominent person in Britain. So the sole purpose of their coming is to get these prisoners released. So it's an expedition. So but I can does an invasion and law. And then it was in 1869, just after a year of the expedition, that they regretted they should have stayed in Ethiopia because of the opening of the Suez Canal. Fascist Italy alone, fascist Italy Mandelo. Italian War One. Yeah, I was one. Italian War, Italian War, fascist alone, fascist man master. But the Italian Israel. So Yamon and Oxumidi has in Yazanion, careful no one. So it is Italian occupation period. German soon to know. Then, in the HA, what is the stand of HA regarding restitution? Ethiopia is a signatory country of the 1970 Convention on Illicit Trafficking of Heritage. So, Ethiopia's stand is revision of the convention. So, both Egypt, countries like Mexico, Greece, India, many African countries are in favor of the revision of the convention so that it should apply to the period before 1970. What challenge do we have when we restitute actually? There are several challenges actually. So, but we work in concert. Sometimes the ministry plays an important role. I mean, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Sometimes people in diaspora, people of Ethiopian origin, they play the most important role. Sometimes AHA, sometimes Alula personally, also personally. So there are several challenges, but we have to handle every case very carefully and then sensitively, particularly in case of objects that are auctioned. For the looted material heritage, for the Italian occupation period, very soon we will start or commence a legal suite, because we have the 1957, 47 Paris Treaty. So there is a provision there which makes Italy to return all art and heritage objects looted during the occupation.
Within 18 months?
Yeah, within 18 months, but we know how long it took even to return the obelisk of Aksum. Some were immediately returned within a few years, like the Lion of Judah, because the French were highly involved in that, because they are the ones who erected it. Apart from that, non-looted ምንላቸው አሁን ዘላለም ያነሳው አለ ይሄ ከጣሊያኑ በስተቀረ የመቅደላውን ሎትድ ሆኖም እያወቅ ነው ሌጋል ፕሮቪዥን የለው ምንም ልናደርገው አንችልም። እያንዳንዷን ፒስ ላይ ፒስ እያነሱ መደራደር፣ ሁለተኛ ደግሞ የየሀገሩን ሕግና ደንብ እንደገና ደግሞ የሙዚየሞችንም ሕግ ተከትሎ ያን ይዘን ነው እየተንቀሳቀስን ያለ ነው። አሁን ከውጭ ጉዳይ ሚኒስቴር ጋር በጣም የተነከረ ግንኙነት በዚህ ላይ ጀምረናል። የአልበርትና ቪክቶሪያ ሙዚየም ያሉት ጋር እንደገና ሪኮንሲደር አድርገን አንድ ነገር ክራፍት እያደረግን ነው። እንዳለቀ እንግዲህ በእነሱና በእኛ መካከል ድርድር ሊካሄድ ይሆናል። ያን ድርድር ትንሽ ኮንፊደንሻል አድርገን ስለያዝነው ነው ሪሊዝ የምናደርግበት ጊዜ ይኖራል። ግን አሁን ቅርስ ለማስመለስ በጣም ትልቅ ጥረት እየተደረገ ነው። በዛ ላይ ደግሞ ሁሉም ኤምባሲዎችን እንደገና ደግሞ ውጭ ጉዳይ በተለይ የአፍሪካና አሜሪካ ጉዳዮች ዳይሬክተሬት ጀነራል ጉዳዩን ትልቅ አድርጎ ወስዶ እየሰራበት ነው። እነዚህን ለማለት ነው። ይቅርታ ጊዜ ስለወሰድኩ።
ዶክተር አሉላ ፓንክረስትን እጅግ በጣም እናመሰግናለን።